There weren't a lot of opportunities for women back in the 50s and 60s. We were more or less told when we were at school that you don't need to have a good education, you don't need to go on past, say, year 10, because most women will just go to work for a couple of years, get married, have children and stay at home and be very, very happy with that lot. Of course, it's changed now. And I left school about 1964. Things were starting to change, but not markedly, I guess. So you really had to make your own way. You had to make things happen rather than wait for things to happen back in those days. My mother had always been a very business-orientated lady, and she had her own sewing machine business. She operated that till probably in her late 60s. So there was always that influence from her. She was very organised, a very forthright lady, very strong lady. So I guess I might have picked up some of those traits from her. When I left school, I went to do a optometrist course, and then I went to work for RM Gow. That's the cake mix people that did Goldcrest cake mixes back in the 50s and 60s. And then I went to the AMP, and I stayed there till I was 19, when I got married and went to Western Australia up into Dampier and Karratha for 10 years. We got an opportunity to go to Dampier. He got a job. I didn't have one. We were just married and really didn't have any real goals other than we'd like to not have children for 5 years and come back with $25,000. But after 10 years we came back and we had 4 children and a little bit of money, but not as much as we would have hoped. While we were in Dampier, we started up some businesses. I was a secretary initially, and then I opened a baby wear business, and I had that opened at night and weekends because I was working full-time during the day. Then I thought, well, we've looked after the babies now, because in Dampier and Tom Price, they had the highest population growth in Australia back in the 70s, because the average age in those towns was only 28. You didn't see anybody with grey hair in those towns. So then we decided to open a sewing machine business, and I also operated that at night and weekends, and that was helping to give the women something to do, because very few women were able to work in those places. There weren't the opportunities. So then my first child came along in 1972, and I started to open the shop during the day when I was home looking after him. Then we thought, well, we've looked after the children, we've looked after the ladies, now we need to look after the men and get them out of the wet mess of a weekend, and we'll start a hi-fi business. So we started selling hi-fi, and we lined the walls of the lounge room with shelves, and we had Marantz and Bose and Lynn Sondeck. And so we created 3 quite large businesses from our home in Dampier over that 10 years. I was part of a team of 3 that we started the Pilbara's first daycare centre as well. And that was a very interesting process, because we had to ask Hammersley Iron to donate a house to us, and then we converted that, ready to take in children. And it was a great need up there, because women had no relations that they could leave their children with. They needed a break. And so the daycare centre started, and it's still going today. I did some part-time work for a while with a company called Key Personnel and Better Staff, and then Noel Whittaker was in the local paper, and he had an advertisement which said, come and buy an investment house without any extra money. So we thought, well, that's us. So off we went. That's how I met Noel. And then 6 months later, he asked me would I like to come into a partnership with him, where we started Whittaker Macnaught. It was difficult, but I had a very supportive husband. Mike had been to Vietnam back in the late 60s, and through ill health as a result of going to Vietnam, in 1990 he wasn't able to work anymore. But he was a fantastic help at home with the family, looking after the house and property and so on. So that enabled me, gave me a lot more freedom to be able to build the business with Noel. I think the young people today have tremendous opportunities available to them, a lot more than maybe 30 or 40 years ago, and I think they are aware of them and they are taking advantage of them. They're also getting a higher education, which I think is nice to see. On the other hand, you don't have to have that high education to be successful. You just need that determination, the passion, the drive, the commitment, the sincerity to go out and service your customer or your client. And if you get that right, the rest just follows.